Welcome to Anecdotes for Success with Matt and Paul. Storytelling is an art form, emphasizing the value and learning that is created through personal experience. Our purpose is to share these stories and experiences with the listener. Everyone has a powerful testimony. Let's use them to level up to our best life with truth, meaning, trade-offs, and perspective.
Big shout out to Isaac Mather for the new podcast intro. You can check Isaac's music out on all socials or directly at isaacmathermusic.com. We have Tess Cites on tonight. We just spent a couple minutes so Tess and Matt could introduce themselves because we're going to have a great convo tonight, and our viewers didn't need to hear more about Matt, and of course they didn't need to hear anything more about me. Tess, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Absolutely. When my daughters played t-ball and you were like the bat girl on the team at 8U, and I always thought you were like that annoying boy from A League of Their Own with the trumpet.
That actually summarizes me pretty well.
I knew at some point we'd be on a podcast together someday. You just have a
feeling. Yeah, you just knew it. I didn't.
Yeah. I didn't know it. So I was just telling Tess that Matt doesn't really know anything about her. That's what we try to do with our guests. So Matt, I'll reveal it now. Tess is, are you a junior or senior?
I'm a senior.
Oh, way.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Tess is a senior at Villanova University. She plays softball. I'm sure she takes a lot of classes there because she's a very good student. And she was actually Big East Player of the Year last year, which is a tremendous honor. And Matt, the best part, despite all that, is she's from Horseheads, New York, where you and I were born and raised.
Yep, Horseheads proud right here.
So all three of us graduates of the blue and white. And,
yeah.
and when this is released, that's probably what will be trending on Google. Where is Horseheads, New York?
Right.
So anything, Matt, before I have Tess tell her story? Because I know you got something floating around in your head.
No, I'm looking forward to hearing more about you, Tess, and kind of your whatever you want to tell us. And then, I'm sure there's many different angles we can go. So I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Well, and we brought her on because, our 4 pillars, truth, meaning, trade-offs, perspective. We feel you've had a pretty successful journey, and I know along the way you've had a lot of ups and downs, and I know you're going to have incredible journeys after you graduate college because you can't play your sport forever. But all three of us here really love athletics. It's true and dear to our heart. And I think it's a big part of what makes you a person. Right now, you're just in the thick of it for a little while longer. So you go back as far as you want. You tell us about yourself. You get it started. Just telling the viewers about yourself, and then we'll just start asking questions and have a convo. I'm so excited.
Okay. Yeah, so like Mr. Richmond said, my name is Tess. I'm from Horseheads, New York, and I currently attend Villanova University as a senior. My major is comprehensive science, which is basically like a general science major. So take all the good, bios, chems, organic, all of that very fun, interesting stuff. I want to go to physician assistant school. So I'm actually taking a gap year next year, living at home, and I'll just be working like in the hospital and things like that just to gain clinical experience and kind of have a little lull until I go back into grad school, hopefully. So I'll go into grad school hopefully around like 23, 24. So okay, so I'll go back now. So the reason my parents ended up in Horseheads basically is because my dad's job, he works for Corning Incorporated, which is just like a glass company in Corning. And so that's kind of why we're there. My parents are both from the Midwest. So I kind of grew up going to the Midwest and all that fun stuff, from Cleveland, actually. And my dad's from Indiana. So my mom's from Cleveland. And then my parents met at Purdue University. So just a lot of Midwest there. So it was definitely like a change for my parents moving to where we moved. But I think a big thing that helped us, because my sisters were born in Alabama. I was the only one born in Horseheads. I'm the youngest of three girls. And I think the way that we kind of got into like socializing just in Horseheads was through sports. Catherine and Marianne, my two older sisters, they played CYO basketball, CBSA soccer, gymnastics at like head over heels, just all those things that really helped them just get situated with the area, I would say. So I would definitely say that sports were like a huge thing, just getting to know. And obviously that's how I know Mr. Richmond, is because my older sister Marianne and myself, we played with his two daughters, which is crazy that like we started playing together when we were like, I mean, like you said, I was the bat girl at like 6 years old. So
I
and
meant
that was
I meant that I meant that as a compliment. You had so much energy, and
oh, thank you. Thank
it's
you.
hard to funnel at that age. But go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, and then so me personally, like I said, I did a lot of sports growing up: soccer, basketball, gymnastics, tried horseback riding. It wasn't really, that one wasn't for me. And then just growing up through Horseheads, I started playing travel softball when I was 8 for like Lady Rebels for that travel team, and then I switched over to Lady Bandits when I was like 10. So just doing a lot of travel. My sisters played travel softball, so I really grew up like around the softball field, just going to softball tournaments with my parents. And then once I started, I guess I would say around like 14 and 16 under, that's when like recruiting and the talk about playing college softball really came into the picture. And just kind of making the decision of, do you want to play a college sport? At what level do you want to play a college sport? Where do you want to play a college sport? And just all these huge questions that are really overwhelming for a 14 to 16-year-old girl. And I just really fell in love with softball just because my family grew up playing it, and I grew up, like I said, at the softball field. So around like 16, I started playing with more prominent organizations. And it's difficult because being from a place like Horseheads, it's obviously a much smaller area. So playing for like a decent travel team, we had to drive an hour because I played for the TC Tremors, which was a travel softball team that Allie played for, and Jenna. Sorry, Jenna. And I played for them my junior year, and then coming into junior year, I started September 1st of my junior year is when softball recruiting starts. So I got calls from Villanova, Binghamton, Canisius, and UMass Amherst. And so the fall of my junior year, I just started going on visits. And then I eventually committed to Villanova because they offered me in December, and I like pretty much immediately committed because this was like my top school out of the 4. Out of really anywhere, honestly. Like this was kind of like a dream school almost, and it kind of felt at times unobtainable, but obviously I'm here. And then senior year, I played for a travel organization called Newtown Rock, which was a travel organization out of the Philadelphia area. So that was definitely like a big change just in pace and travel, like just driving like 8 hours for practice twice a week. It was just like, well, we'd drive down on Friday, and then I'd have practice Saturday, Sunday, and then I drive home Sunday. So I would drive like down here once a week, which was grueling at the moment. But then in high school, I still played basketball, and I ran cross country for my first 2 years of high school. And then COVID happened, and then I was still fortunate enough to come to Villanova, but things were just very different just due to COVID. And we didn't really have a fall season, and our spring season was very, very like watered down almost just because of COVID. We couldn't have the same amount of traveling. And my freshman year was a roller coaster because I got COVID in January, right when the season started, and then I sprained my ankle really bad, and I was out for about a month. And then eventually, like, I got to play again as time went on, and then we ended up winning our first Big East championship ever in program history my freshman year. And we just had some great leaders, and Paige Rao actually was like our pitcher that year, and she's from the Binghamton area, and she's a very well known softball player just in like upstate New York and around here. And then my sophomore year was just a very different year for me. I think that was kind of like my turning point in my softball career, just because that was the first year I was a returner and I was kind of trying to like make my way on the team and play. And I started off really hot my sophomore year, and then just like personal issue, like just anxiety and things like that really got in the way with my performance. And then I ended up doing better towards the end of my sophomore year. And then we ended up winning a second Big East title, which was amazing. And then my junior year, had a decent year, can't complain. And then we ended up making it to the Big East championship, and we ended up losing, unfortunately, which was honestly devastating for me personally. It was devastating, and it was so difficult. And I think one of the big things that was so hard was that, like, you know, people are congratulating you for personal success, but in my opinion, personal success means nothing if your team's not succeeding. So it was kind of this like bittersweet taste in my mouth of last year. And so now I'm here, started my senior year, actually, well, halfway through first semester because our fall breaks next week. But we just finished fall ball. And yeah, that's pretty much my life story. I don't know if that was as in depth as you guys wanted, but hopefully that is.
No, it's incredible. It's quite a life story right now. I'm sure you're going to have more to add to it after college and after
Mhm.
this season. But Matt, I know your wheels are turning.
Well, yeah. Well, Tess, first of all, thanks for being here and sharing your story, and you certainly have shown you certainly had a lot of success, personally and as a team, and it's clear that it didn't come without sacrifice, right? And I mean, just sharing the part about going to Philadelphia, every weekend for practice is that of course not only sacrificed by you, but I would imagine family members or
Yeah, my
there's a
parents for
lot of
sure.
people involved in there. But you know, what I've got several questions, and I'm sure we'll get to them throughout. There's no real order here, but one of the things I'm wondering is that Big East player of the year is obviously a tremendous honor, and you, I'm sure, must take some pride in it. And you expressed your opinion on team versus individual awards, but you've also expressed that you had your team's had some success. Your freshman year, the first championship last year, you guys fell short, but clearly you were competitive and expected to win it. Are expectations different now for you than they've ever been, and how does that impact? How do you handle that? I would imagine after winning that honor, there's people expect you to do it again, right? Whether it's you or not, I don't know, but and then do you expect the team to perform like they do, and do you expect to be the leader that takes the team to the next level, and as a senior?
Yeah, that's so funny you asked that because like I was just talking to my parents about that yesterday. It is definitely like a change in expectation just because um coming into my junior year, like D1 softball always does like these articles, and they're kind of like before the season starts, it's like player to watch, and like on each team and like the whole D1, like who's the player to watch. And that was never going to be me just because I didn't make enough of an impact on my team my first 2 years. And I did make an impact, but like nothing that was like, oh, this is like the player to watch, right?
Mm-hmm.
So coming in as I feel like I've always personally done better coming in kind of as like an underdog, like someone that people don't really know, just because like there's no stress. It's like I don't really have to meet anyone's expectations. And then it's like a total 180 because this year it's like I really want to meet expectations. And it definitely just does change the dynamic of how you approach things. And especially being a senior, like being someone that's like a leader on my team and something like that, it definitely does change the dynamic. But like, for example, this fall, it is something that goes through your mind a lot, just like playing other teams and like, do people know that I got this award, or are people like thinking of me differently because I got this award? Like it can't help but run through the back of my mind, but I really, really, really work hard just to try to silence that. because something that I've always believed is like game doesn't change. Like it's the same game regardless of any other external factors. And something that I really want to focus on this year is just to kind of stay grounded in myself and just know that I'm capable of great things. And but also you have to remember that it's like it's a game of failure, and failure is going to happen regardless of what you do or how much you prepare or anything. So it's like it does change the expectations, but I just want to remember that I want to play softball the way I want to play softball, and like it's my last year. I might as well enjoy it and not stress myself out too bad. But then also like I think there has been like team wise just like a statement of excellence, and it's like I as a senior want to put that just state like just excellence around my team, and like every decision that we make needs to be leading us in the direction of a Big East championship, and just holding people to a high standard, and also just kind of acting more like a leader with my actions rather than my words. I feel like I've always kind of been a more um what's the word? Like I've just always kind of led by example rather than words. So that's something I really want to hit on this year. Like people seeing me go early and stay later after practice, people seeing me do the little things, just stuff like that, I think does impact how a team operates.
Great. So what do you think the difference is? I mean, you said freshman, sophomore years, you weren't the player, the player to watch, as you put it, right? Going back to those
Right.
articles and that kind of thing. What happened your junior year that made you perform at a higher level than maybe was expected? Was there something that did you train harder? Was it you just got in a groove, or mentally did it click? You know, or maybe you don't even know. But was there anything that you thought like, boom, like you know, I'm seeing the ball better because of this, or I've changed my stance, or I've just been doing the other things, putting in the extra time that I wasn't before.
I definitely would say my mental approach. I've said this in a lot of like answers I feel like for this question is just my mental approach. I think my freshman and sophomore year, I was so terrified of failure. I was so terrified of being ripped out of game. I was so terrified of just making a mistake, or like, you know, when it's 3 balls, 2 strikes, bottom of the seventh, we're on defense. Someone hits a pop up to center field. Like I was the person that was like, I don't want to catch that ball. I don't want to make that throw out. Like you know what, you can do it. I don't want to do it because like I'm too scared. And I feel like my whole mentality has kind of changed to like, no, like I want to make that out. Like I want to be that person in a crunch situation that comes up to the plate and like hits a ball over the wall when we're down 2 runs. You know, I want to be the one to tie the game. And I think just that change from fear of failure and turning that into like wanting to compete has been like the biggest change for me. Also, like as Mr. Richmond knows, something that's really important to me in my life is just faith. I've always been, well, not always, but I would definitely say like my sophomore year, I really kind of like hit rock bottom almost. And like I think my faith was something that really pulled me up. And that's something that's just always stayed with me, is that like it's just bigger than a game. Or it's life is bigger than a game. And you know, there are going to be good days and there are going to be bad days, and just being mature enough to realize that. I think my freshman sophomore year, I was like, my life is over. Like I struck out 5 times today. Like I'm a terrible person. But it's like at the end of the day, it's like you're so much more than what the sport that you play. And I think that's something that's so hammered into student athletes just around the country, is that, you know, your only worth comes from your sport, and your dignity comes from how you play in a game. And that's just no way to live your life. It's just a terrible way to live your life. So
yeah, it sounds like your perspective. Paul and I talk about perspective all the time, and our 4 pillars, perspective is one of them. And it sounds like your perspective changed, and whether it was through your maturity, your faith, like you said, and just realizing that. And this is I'm you're the example here, but I think it's important for the people listening to understand, like we get so caught up in our identities, right, in our self who we're supposed to be and what we're supposed to be.
Right.
And breaking free from that can be so empowering, and the pressure we put on ourselves. And look, your sports is, especially softball, like you said, a high failure type
Yeah.
a type environment. But I mean, I think people do that in their jobs and in their lives and their relationships and all sorts of things. And I think having perspective, and I think that'll serve you so well in your future, no matter what you're doing. But I think it was important to point out that to people that your perspective, and you're in charge of that, right? You get to decide that. That's us that do that to ourselves. So that was an interesting answer. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to move forward. I've known your family forever. I mean, I've watched your two sisters and yourself grow up playing sports. You're awesome. Your sisters are awesome. How do you think being the youngest played a role in shaping how you are today, or is it just dumb luck you're playing now, or what was that process like growing up? Because you were dragged around a lot before you even
Yeah.
played.
Yeah. I definitely think that being the youngest definitely impacted like where I ended up, just because not to backtrack, but I spoke at a conference in Binghamton, or technically Waverly, this past summer, and it was basically like a panel of a couple like Division I athletes, specifically softball. So there was like a player from Binghamton who was there, the Binghamton coach, Binghamton assistant coach, and like my coach from Villanova, because we're all from upstate New York, like we're all from the 607.
I know them all quite well, by the way. Go ahead.
Yes. And because I think one was wasn't she Allie's roommate?
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice girl. And basically all these people were just asking us questions about like recruiting and travel softball, and like what's good ages to do this, and when is it good to reach out to a coach, and blah blah blah. And I think being the youngest, it was like with my two older sisters, like my parents didn't always have the answers to those questions. And my parents and I always talk about it, is how like playing a Division I sport is just so much of knowing like how to market yourself, and when to play on a specific travel team, or when to get recruited, or when to email coaches. Like I think by the time I rolled around, my parents, definitely because I was the youngest, like they had a little bit more time with me. Like regarding Catherine, like my oldest sister, if she wanted to play college softball, they couldn't necessarily drop everything and drive Catherine to Philadelphia for practice. And like by the time I was a freshman in high school, my sisters were both at school. So I think that definitely did play a role, just in the time that they had for me. And my sisters have always been so supportive of that too. Like it's never been, like, oh, mom and dad took you and did this. Like they were just always very supportive of that as my parents, or like as my siblings. So I definitely do think that being the youngest definitely played a role.
That's awesome. You mentioned, well, I know again, because I witnessed a lot of it. You played more than one sport in high school, and that's not easy. And what would your advice be to aspiring athletes in any sport? I mean, I took your old high school softball job last year, and the team you played for, not your coaching job. But I battle with it a lot, because kids like, oh, I'm going to drop this sport or that sport because I just want to focus on softball, or just want to focus on basketball. I don't think that ever ends well. What are your thoughts?
I would definitely agree. I grew up in the culture of like playing three, like honestly, I grew up in the culture of the more sports you play, the better athlete you're going to be. And that just made me think of like Coach Bump from Binghamton. She was telling me a story about how like she plays a lot of rec sports, and she like tore her ACL, I think it was a couple of years ago, right? And the doctor literally told her that she would have tore her ACL like much earlier and much worse if she wouldn't have played multiple sports. Because he asked her, he was like, do you play multiple sports? And she's like, I'm in a pickup basketball league. Like I play like softball. Like I run, I do this. And he was like, no, that's the reason why like your knee is so strong. So it's like, only like not only that, right? But it's like also I think that different sports teach you different lessons. And from my perspective, like I had three different coaches in high school, and all three of them operated very differently regarding just like all aspects, like whether it was like being there on time or being there like versus being there right when practice started, or does it matter what we're wearing to practice, or just things like that that you don't think have a big impact on you as an athlete, but they really do. So it was like the three sports I played were all very different and like organized very different. And it ultimately, I think, made me a better athlete, just mentally and physically. And then also like the whole physical aspect of it. Like I ran cross country, and by the time I went into basketball, I felt like I was like conditioned for basketball. And then you go from basketball to a sport like softball that are like so different. And but your body gets to work on like different muscle groups and things like that. And like just agility, like I could go on and on. But I'm just saying that multiple sports give you, oh, I'm sorry. My light is motion activated, but multiple sports give you multiple different my light is like motion activated. It like turns off. Okay, there we go. Multiple sports give you multiple different things, positive things.
Yeah. And one more question about that before I turn it back over to Matt. I think you sometimes have different roles in different sports, obviously.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna refer to my two daughters, Jen and Allie. They loved your energy in sports. They loved how loud you could be. I'm not gonna say obnoxious. I already said
Thank
that
you.
earlier. But they went on to say you were probably the best teammate they ever had. And talk about the importance of being a teammate.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah, well, it had not it had nothing to do with how you played. You were still a teammate and a fan. I don't remember you ever lowering anybody. You always lifted people up regardless of your performance.
Thank you. Being a team, I mean, because if you think about it, right, like your whole life, you're technically a teammate, right? It's like when you're married, you're a teammate to your spouse. When you're when you're a sibling, you're a teammate to your sisters. When you're a child, like you're a teammate with your parent, right? And it's like life is about relationships. And if you go through these sports not realizing that, then I don't even think you should be playing sports at all, because I have made like some of the best relationships in my life to this day that have come through sports. And it's because like both parties were being good teammates. Um, and I think something that's really awesome is that like when I did receive the award I received, like there were so many people on my team that were like genuinely happy for me. And um I was even talking about this with one of my friends at school. Like when you're a teammate, you know, it's like their success turns into your success and your success turns into their success. Right. So it's like one of my best friends on my team, and like probably like my best friend like in my life, she's just one of these people. Her name is Brooklyn. And like no matter what you do, like she'll be there with you through like the thick or thin, like if you're performing, if you're not performing. And like she's just someone that I try to model myself off of, just from like a teammate aspect. But I think another reason I know what a good teammate is because I really know what a bad teammate is. I've seen people be horrible teammates, right? It's like yelling at people, screaming at people, not picking people up. And it's like, once again, it's like, should you really be playing sports? Because it's like the point of playing a sport is being on a team and being a teammate and realizing that you can't go anywhere without every single person on your roster. So, yeah, being a teammate is very important, and just genuinely like willing the good of the other person. I think that is like, if I could sum up being a good teammate, it's like willing the good of the other person.
I, Matt, Tess could pretty much be the poster person for perspective at her young age, couldn't she?
Yeah, and I mean, you nailed it with relationships. I mean, it's just my belief system. So, life is about relationships, as you just said it. And
Mhm.
I can't, I wouldn't change a word about how you said it. That's exactly right. Well, let me ask you this. So you're at a point, you're a senior. You talked a little bit about, your future and what your plans are, professionally, career wise, and you've got another season ahead of you and goals. And what is your priority at this point in your life? Like where are you with all you have going on and where you are in terms of being a senior and such? Like, what would you consider your biggest priority?
Oh, that's that's also a really good question. I mean, I know the right answer for me personally, like my main priority should be like religion and God. That's something that has always been, when you kind of like list all your priorities, right? It should be like God, family, school, friends, like that would be how I would order it. Does it always happen that way? Obviously not, right? It's like, sometimes you need to prioritize yourself. And I feel like in different situations, like I just prioritize different things. Something that, like, from like a religion aspect, like something I really strongly prioritize is going to church every week. Like I have a church 2 minutes away, like I'm actually staring at it right now. And it's like that is something that is a non-negotiable on Sunday. Like I literally got back from New Jersey on Sunday night at 8:55, and my roommate and I walked in our uniforms to church, like because we have a 9 o'clock mass. And I asked my coach, I was like, "Can you please drive faster? Like I literally just need to go to church, right?" Like that's something that I really prioritize. But then also like school is a big priority, and also like getting extra reps with softball, like going there early, staying there late. So it's like I feel like in different moments of like my week, for example, I have different priorities. But also like one of my main priorities is like keeping my priorities in check, right? Not like doing too much or doing like not doing too much with one priority and having another one suffer. And I think that's just kind of like time management almost. Like I feel like priorities are just time management. So it's just things like that. My family and I have like every week we have like a 2 hour FaceTime call just to kind of catch up, talk to each other. We do that every Monday night from like 8 to 10. So like yet again, like another priority that like me and my family have. And then I also like prioritize my friends. I really love hanging out with my friends, like love hanging out with like my boyfriend, things like that. So it's like those are also big priorities in my life. But I don't really know if that answered your question.
No, the reason I asked it, Tess, is because it's complicated, right? And
Yeah.
it wouldn't have been an interesting question or answer if it was simple. So we all have to make those choices, right? We all have to make decisions on priorities and it's not easy. It's generally not easy because there are a lot of things that matter in our lives, and it sounds like relationships though are ultimately what matter to you, whether it's with God, your family, your teammates, your boyfriend, et cetera, et cetera. It sounds to me like relationships are your priority in a lot of ways. Maybe like we all have to do. Maybe you'll think about it more, but that seems like a good place to lay your priorities, at least in my opinion.
Thank you.
Tess, at what age did you think or know you were going to go play college softball?
I think it was like 15 or 16. And honestly, the rule changing, because I don't know if Matt, you are familiar with like the softball recruiting, but basically it was like before, I think it was like sometime during, it was spring of my sophomore year, the NCAA changed recruiting parameters to like you could not speak to a player or offer them a scholarship until November 1st of their junior year. And the reason they changed this was because like there were girls that were in like I remember it got as young as sixth grade. Like it was like sixth, seventh, and eighth graders being committed. Like I even knew people I played college softball with or in high school, like they were committed to schools in seventh and eighth grade. And I'm very thankful that the rule got changed because it kind of slowed things down for me. I feel like I really didn't develop into like a decent player until I was like 17 or 18. And that's when I got recruited. And if that rule never changed, right, I think the window would have been closed for me because even I was talking about my friend Brooklyn, she committed to Fordham, who was my coach's past school. She changed coaching jobs. She committed in eighth grade. So if they would have finished out the 2020 class, which was me, by eighth or ninth grade, like I would have never gone to Villanova. So that was like a huge thing that really helped me because just having those extra 2 years to develop like as a person and as a player really helped. But definitely like I would say around 15 or 16, I decided like this is something that I would want to do in college. And I think also from the angle of like, it could help pay for school. It could help get, scholarships. Like that was another part of it. Not that it's like all about money or anything like that, but it's just like another way to help. Like I have two older sisters, like putting 3 kids through college in this economy is just very difficult. So I think that was another factor that played a role. But,
Yeah, it's that rule is a game changer. I mean, you talk about 7th, 8th graders committing, and then how do you even know what you're going to study, yet alone what school you're going to go to? Then the pressure and the work ethic and the mental health. But anyway, that was great. So kids that want to go play college softball, you've done it. What's a day in the life of Tess like? Is it as glamorous as the press makes it and the media makes it and the highlights make it? Like how hard is it?
yeah, unfortunately, no. I think my experience, like everyone's experience is different, obviously, because I think it has a lot to do with like what you major in and just where you go to school. Villanova is a very academically rigorous college. Like it's just no major here is like a walk in the park. So I'm like I'm like a STEM major, which obviously makes it a lot more difficult. But if you want to know like a day of my life, so this morning I'll go through today. So this morning we had lift at 7 a.m. So I was up at 6:30. And then I had class, and then I had a meeting with my coaches. And then normally we'd have practice from 11:30 to 2:30. But we like just switched to 8 hours, so we're not having practice this week, but that would be like a normal day. And then I have class from like 2:30 to 4, come home, shower, eat, and then I had class from 6 to 9. And then I have a huge exam on Friday, so I'll probably be studying for that until I don't even know, just till the morning probably. So yeah, that's basically a day in my life. Like it's just basically just lift, class, practice, class, study. And
I
that's
find
typical.
it amazing because you're surrounded by people that do the same thing. So
Mhm.
that's basically become your college norm, right?
Yeah. Yeah, like
But
it's weird not having practice. Like just
but
like having like 2-3 hours just for
and,
nothing. I'm like, I don't know what to do with myself.
but there's nothing normal about what you do. And the point is, you talk about perspective, you're surrounding yourself in a culture that seems normal because everybody's doing the same thing.
Mhm.
And someday you're going to be on the other side of it and say, that was crazy, but you'll probably miss it. Like
Yeah,
that's the discipline you're preparing yourself for.
right. Yeah. And I know I know I'll miss it because even this summer, like just being home, I was working like a 40-hour work week and like it almost seemed like working wasn't even enough to fill my time. Like it was just like I was like, this is like it was a lot. I'm not saying it was easy. It was rough working 40 hours, but it was almost like, not having and like you also think about like just the physical aspect that it takes on you, like waking up early, going to bed late, and like like lifting and like practicing, like it's a lot on your body also. So it's like not only is your time taken up, like you're physically exerting all this energy all the time, like versus like working like 40 hours a week where you're just kind of like working.
Isn't it meaningful though? Don't you find meaning in it?
In like my college experience.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. I love like you know I talk about like my 8 to like 10 p.m. schedule, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. schedule, and like, but I love it. Like it just becomes like your norm, and I real like you do. really find like your groove and you find your people. And like you said, it's like I'm surrounded by everyone that's doing the same thing. So I get to be with the same group of like my friends every day and stuff like that. And also it's like you're never really like alone in anything either. Like you always have people that you are seeing at practice and you always have people like in the same class. So it's like I really do love my schedule and I enjoy what I do. Not all the time, but overall I'd say I do.
Now, Tess, kind of is a good segue to one of the things I wanted to ask. I really enjoy talking to athletes, and it's such a big part of your life. And then as you're a senior, and then you know, there's a time when it stops, like it does for everyone.
Right.
And you know, when when that happens, we talked about identity earlier and what we think of ourselves as, or what other people think of us as well. How we're how we interact with people, as a softball player or player in your case. And have you given any thought to what it's going to be like not to have this type of rigorous schedule on you, and what has this experience taught you in terms of how's it going to impact your future, in not having you've got to be here at this time and you've got to be here at that time, and you got when you're much more free to make your own decisions. Have you given that any thought of what that might look like for you?
Um, I definitely have given it thought. Have I let it sunk in or even allowed myself to think that much about it? No. Like it's something that I don't really want to think about just because I like my life. I like the way that things are going and I like playing softball. I like being around my friends all the time. So I try not to think about it, but also I feel like these 4 years are so monumental and they will change the way that I operate and just the way that I view life. Like you said, like it's all about perspective. And I think that being a college athlete is just so extraordinary in the fact that it just changes your perspective, like on everything, like about what you wear to what time you get places to how you talk to people to how you treat people, like to how you view yourself. And I think that's like the main thing about perspective is it just like it just changes your outlook on everything. And hopefully like something that I hope and pray that I'll never lose is just like the perspective that I have right now. Like the way I was talking to you about the perspective of like myself playing softball, about how, it's just a game. And I know the game's gonna end, right? But it's like I'm my own person, right? I'm not just a softball player. And I think that's something that I've really tried to focus on since my sophomore year because I do feel so bad for people that they view their entire identity and worth as their sport because it's like you're going to stop playing your sport eventually. And it's like, what are you going to be left with? And I want to be left with good memories and good relationships and not just like, oh, shoulda, woulda, coulda with like the sport itself. Like just being a college athlete is so much more than just sport. It's the grind. It's just everything that you go through on a daily basis. And hopefully that like after softball ends, I'll still be a hard worker. I'll still have integrity. I'll still be a good teammate, whether it's in the workforce or in grad school or, like as a mother, like something like that. So it's just taught me so many lessons that you just don't even think are important, but they really are.
Yeah, great. I totally agree. Those lessons are everything, and how you use them and where you take them in life. That's going to be the true legacy this sport has on you and other people. And I like that you have that perspective because I know so many people who, all they're still living in, the they're living 20 years behind. They're living,
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
if only we
Yep.
would have, and what about the year we did this? And there's time for that. Don't get me wrong; those are
Yeah.
wonderful memories. But when that's you, that's I always think of Uncle Rico and Napoleon Dynamite. I don't know,
Yeah.
but like though I know those people. I think we
Yeah.
all do in some sense, and that's sad to me. But what's wonderful is the you pointed out the lessons you have, the discipline, the good teammate, the strong relationships, the resiliency of I struck out, I made an error, whatever it is. Well, there's another at bat coming. There's another ground ball coming, whatever the
Right.
case may be. So that is what's important. That is truly what's important.
Yeah, I agree.
Tess, do you think you'll ever coach or give back to the game, or is it too early to talk about that because you're still playing?
Um, I mean, I could definitely see myself like coaching my kids and things like that. Would I ever want to coach like a high school team? I could probably see myself doing that. It's just like with my profession, like I'm not sure that I could do that if I do end up becoming a PA, like fingers crossed. But I think like it's honestly like the amount of like lessons I've learned and things that I just know about the game, like whether it's mentally, physically, emotionally, like I feel like it would kind of almost be a waste to not share like just the things that I've kind of learned along the way. Almost like it's like I've gone through all this stuff. Like, is there another 15-year-old girl that could benefit from my perspective, and what I could tell her that might help her go through something? Or like, even like I was talking about my friend Brooklyn, like she was like pre-med, planning on becoming like a doctor. And then she tore like everything in her knee and she had to redshirt, and now she's like becoming a like psychiatrist, like to help people. So it's like kind of like the lessons that she learned like through her injury, she's going to help student athletes in the future, right? And it's kind of like the lessons that I've learned, like should I give back to the community by like letting people know of just like the lessons that I've learned. So I think it would kind of be a waste if I didn't, but I'm not sure. I haven't given too much thought about it yet.
Well, I'm just saying, there's a local high school team where you're from, and if you
Mm-hmm.
have a gap year next year, you're more than
The
welcome to show
assistant.
up to practice. Yeah, absolutely.
No, I
Uh,
would. I would love to.
Is this an
but in all,
NCAA violation of any sort, Paul, that you're doing here?
well, she'll be graduated.
I'm kidding.
But you know what, Tess? That's why I took the high school job last year, and some as many people that say congratulations, the other people are like, you're crazy.
Right.
Uh, I think there's so many more lessons besides the game. And I think even a lot of young athletes get lost in the game and they don't look bigger picture or even understand their potential because they get so caught up in immediate wins and losses and progress instead of the process. So
Right.
anytime I think somebody that's been through any type of experience can go back and provide that perspective, you'd be wonderful at it. So I
Thank you.
hopefully you'll identify it in some way, shape, or form as you go through life, and
Right.
that's exciting to hear.
Thank you.
Uh, Advice to young high school players. If you could go back and give young Tess Cites advice, or if
Oh,
any high school player, because I don't know if young Tess Cites would have listened,
yeah,
but
right. I would have been stubborn.
what
Um,
what would you give them? The ninth grader, the eighth grader, the 10th grader, like what would you tell them in any sport? Doesn't even have to be softball.
I just think that's something that's so difficult, like today, and just with like social media and things like that, is just kind of being able to be like your true, like authentic self. I think that's something that I struggled with a lot in high school, just um feeling like an outcast from time to time, or not really feeling like I could be myself around people, like around everyone, just trying to like live a life of, I mean, I don't know if I would say this to an eighth grader, but just like living a life of like integrity almost, and just kind of finding like a set of values and sticking to them. I mean, I know that, I mean, I'm still learning. Everyone's still learning, like at the stage of their life, but just trying to be like the best version of yourself every day, I would say, whether that's in your sport, in school, with your family, with your friends, whatever. Just trying to like be the most authentic version of yourself. Probably that.
I think that's awesome. And again, we've had the pleasure of following your career since day one. And I think what makes it exciting to root for Tess Cites is the fact that I know you're an incredible softball player, but you're an incredible person too. And I think when you have when you have someone that has both those traits, it's a no-brainer.
Thank you so much. That means a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we thank you for coming on.
Of course. Yeah, this was so fun and kind of got me away from school a little bit. So can't complain about that. But,
I'm gonna give a big shout out right now. I think Mr. Baxter's gonna be excited to listen to this podcast.
Oh yes, I'm sure he will.
What do you think? That's your coach's father. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Yeah.
He is a fan of everybody.
Yes, you talk about rooting for people.
Yeah, that's awesome. Any final thoughts, Matt?
No, I mean, you're obviously an outstanding athlete, and I don't know you, Tess, other than our conversation here, but you clearly have a great head on your shoulders, and no doubt have a promising future ahead of you, and you're still learning. So am I, right? I mean, it just never ends, and I think as long as you keep that perspective and keep trying to be the best version of yourself, like you said, you're going to have your ups and downs. But when you have that value system like you talk about, and that's how one of the ways I look at life as well, that keeps you grounded, right? It keeps you within your guardrails of who you are, and
right,
and there's some wiggle room in there, because we're human, but I think that's great advice for people, whether they're in their 20s or in their 80s. I think that holds true for anyone, and I'm glad you said it. But I'll certainly be paying attention to your senior year here now that we're best friends, and
yeah, right.
and looking forward to that, and rooting for you both on the field and certainly off as well. So thank you for sharing, and I think there's people can learn a lot from what you've said and what you've been through.
Thank you. Sorry, I just started
coughing. That's okay. Tess,
I choked up. No.
Yeah, that we have a tendency to do that to people. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I miss the T-ball days.
I know. I do too. When life was simpler.
Really? Listen, yeah. Like after a T-ball game, you didn't have to go study for a midterm, right?
I know. I know. I say this to people all the time. Like, I wish I could just be at college and not have to do schoolwork. Like, I wish I could just live here, play softball, hang out with my friends, and that's it. But
Tess, there are some people who do that. They just only get to do it for about a year usually before they're forced to leave.
Right. They get 1 year of freedom, and then that's that.
That's that.
No, that's incredible, Tess. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And so nice to meet you, Matt, and get to talk to you a little bit.
Likewise. Thank you.